Hello, let's get started with this toe reading today. So, when I do a toe reading, what I'm doing is I'm looking at your toes and seeing what messages your toes are sharing and helping translate the energetic language of your toes. So, in toe reading, your right side represents how you are moving through the world. It is the way that you're showing up and your relationship to the everything outside of you, the world. And with your left foot, that is all of the internal stuff and your connection with source. And so as we look at these things, there are two, while the toes represent the same energies, they clearly represent very differently depending on is it with the outside or is it with the inside. So we're going to start with your large toes, your big toes, your great toes. And on your left side, that is your spirit path. And on your right side, that is your life path. And so as I look at your toes, one thing to look at is just how do they look at when you contrast them against each other. So there's never any judgment, it's only awareness. It's just reading the messages that your toes have to share. And so you can see that there is some difference, particularly in this inside curve of your foot and in the direction that your toes are pointing with your life and spirit path. So let's start here with your spirit path. So when we look at this toe, it comes up, it's pretty straight, grounded here. There's a little bit of, just leaning here, but not much. This toenail is more straightforward, say, than this one, almost straight, not totally straight. And then coming around. So some nice groundedness happening here. And generally speaking, your connection with spirit, your spirit path seems to be quite healthy. The thing that I would recommend for you would be making sure that you stay grounded. Sometimes we can get way up here and just staying really, really grounded. And when we go to the next slide where we look at your chart, your astrological chart, because you are a sun Capricorn and you have a lot of stuff going on in your Capricorn, that beautiful earth energy being grounded is very, very important for you. And so, and grounding, sometimes we ground through our root chakras and then extending that down, grounding in through our feet into the earth. Now, I'm going to talk about this space here in your toes for just in just a minute. And I want you to just imagine if this toe is just slightly straighter, that it would open up this space here. And I'll talk about what that means when I get over to this one here. And optimism, I see a lot of optimism really in most of your toes. Hope. If you don't like the word optimism, just the word hope. There is hope that, uh, that things will be good for you. And that's a beautiful gift to have that hope. Let's look here at your life path toe. When we look at this life path toe, we see a larger protrusion here, which can indicate bending over backwards, self-compromising to keep the peace or for an ideal that we think is higher, even if it doesn't really work for us. This can happen a lot when we feel like we don't have choice or that kind of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. It doesn't really matter what you choose. There's a significant perceived downside to whatever those choices. And then we come up and we see that this toe, if this was your toe, it's actually leaning this way a little bit. So some groundedness here would be very important, especially as it comes to your life path. It's leaning, it's looking to the past, looking over here to your small toe. When toes point that way, oftentimes when they point that way, it means you're looking to the past. And we see this in the toe and the nail and in even this leaning of the toe, being grounded here in the present, but looking to the past. And so if that makes sense, leaning over so that this part of your toe is grounded, trying to be present and this other part of your toe is making a lot less contact with the earth. So, a lot of looking to the past, perhaps wishing things had turned out differently. But really, what's coming to me is this idea of compromising yourself for something else, even if it doesn't work for you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to make a choice to say, keep the peace, or making a choice that is better for the majority of your family, even if it doesn't work for you. A lot of times as moms, we do that. The challenge is then truly embracing that choice instead of wishing that it could be different or looking to the past for some days of glory or um, what would it have been like kind of energy. So again, with this toe, that grounding exercise through the feet, planting all your feet on the ground, all the parts of your feet on the ground would be really impactful. This might also be a place to incorporate some manual work with this toe with the use of affirmations and questions. So the questions, what are you communicating to me? Um, the questions, uh, what's the message here? How can I be more grounded? Where do I go to find where I want to be on my life path? Because this is a life path issue. And finding joy in your current journey and having that hope, which is a gift of yours, for something that may be more aligned with you, but not living there, not living in the future, not living in the past, but staying in the present. And doing those things, I am happy and grounded in the present moment. Um, I know I make the right choices for me and my family. Affirmations like that could be powerful too. While you just gently twist that toe and bring it into more of a straight. So if this was your toe, I'd be pushing just a little bit this way and then pressing this way so that I'm pushing down on the side that is lifted while pushing a little bit more straightness. This manual manipulation can really be powerful to do in conjunction with the questions and the affirmations. Now, let's talk about this space between your toes. This space between your toes is, just one second, really tapping into what are your innermost desires? What are your innermost desires? What are your non negotiable needs? And making sure that those are getting met in some way, shape, or form, that those needs are being met in the highest and best way. And it may not look exactly like what you want. And yet again, I think the real question here is, can I find joy? Because based on your astrological chart with your moon in Leo, finding joy is a non-negotiable need for you. Having fun, non-negotiable need for you. And how can you do that in the highest and best way right now? All right, the space between your toes. The space between your toes indicates leadership and intuition. And so imagine if these toes are both a little more straight, that would open up your channels of intuition. So by focusing on these toes a little bit, you are going to be inviting that intuition to really become a more open channel. Additionally, these are leadership toes, and you are absolutely a leader. And there may be some discomfort with that. So feel into that. The need to be recognized and some fear around leading because of some power dynamics. Lean into those questions. These are also questions that we can explore more deeply when we have our one-on-one call. But those would be places that I would really look at? And in what way do you want to show up as a leader, both spiritually and, okay, this is an energetic release. When I yawn and I'm not tired, which I'm not, that is an energetic release. So there's something in what I just said, whew, that needed to come out. And I invite you to receive that with an open heart, an open mind, and ask questions about it. So, this leadership toe, absolutely, you have the capability, um, in fact, the divine calling to be a leader. All right. Now we're moving on to your second toes, which are the toes that I was really excited to talk about when I first saw your toes. And that is because these are the toes that are sharing the most messages. And the second toes are our expression and communication toes. And so communication is a form of expression, and expression is a form of communication. And so this is, how are we expressing ourselves? This is verbally, this is in the written form, this is in the way that we show up in the world socially, including on social media. This is also the way that we communicate with others and the way that we communicate with self. And so as we go up here and we see both of these toes have a much narrower base and then move up and have a more bulbous top. So these are also, of all of your toes, the toes that are pointed the most downward. We'll talk a little bit about this one, but the toes that are pointed downward just a little bit, as opposed to the sunny, optimistic, filled with hope toes that have the lift on the toenails of the other toes. So there's some blocked energy here in your feeling that you can express and communicate. You may have had a blunt and bold means of communication in the past that has perhaps not always been super well received. I would say, especially as a woman, especially as um, a late Gen X, older millennial woman. Um, this idea of communication, this idea of self-expression. It's what we were taught we had the right to, but we were never taught how to do it. And so oftentimes, you know, a, a woman who took initiative, took action, and showed up in business, in science, in other realms that had typically and have typically been more masculine energy dominated. Sometimes that kind of communication is not always appreciated. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times we can get really slammed for that. There's blocked energy there. I guess that's what I'm saying. And then I am intuiting, and based on your astrological chart, in inferring some additional information. All right, so what do we do about this? So you can see what I'm talking about here. This kind of bulbous uh, top with the narrow bottom and the slight pointing down of those toes. Furthermore, expression and communication are extremely high value to you. And this is something that you highly encourage in others when you're working with people. Having them have the ability to feel comfortable and open, self expressing and communicating is very, very important to you. So keep that and give yourself permission to do the same. These are other toes that would really benefit from some slight, so if this is the toe, just some slight movement right here around the tip. Um, and again, asking questions. What's the message here? Um, what what in my past it created this, what I call significant emotional events, C's, SEE, because they allow us to see things. When we sometimes look in the past at significant emotional events from the past, when bam, that belief about ourselves and the way that we are in this world was created, that's a significant emotional event. And sometimes we think of those things as these really big things. But what I find more and more through this work is that it's consistent small things that are every bit as impactful and can sometimes be a little bit more challenging to actually overcome, because a big significant emotional event, a traumatic event, those are things where we can go back, we can pinpoint, and we can start to reframe those. Whereas ongoing uh, brainwashing, if you will, of some beliefs can actually be a little bit harder, and that ego can sneak in the back door and down the chimney and through the crack in the window much more easily. So just go and identify a few of those emotional events, significant emotional events, where you didn't feel safe communicating and expressing in alignment with you, where you compromised your communication, where you perhaps were criticized, um, and even where you have perhaps done the same to others, where there was something that you did not want to hear, that you didn't want to see communicated, and you wanted to shut that down. Look at those things, especially while lightly massaging those toes. See what comes up for you and journal about it. And we will discuss it more in the call that we have. Your Mercury, I'm just going to click forward to the next slide. Your Mercury and your Mars, and we're going to talk about your Mars in just a minute. Mercury is the ruler of this toe, and it is in Capricorn, which is structured, which is ambitious. Think about that. Go, climbing up the mountain, and structure, ambition, stick-to-itiveness, and drive. Those are the words that are coming to mind that will hopefully be able to help you ask the questions of your toes, especially those communication toes, that are going to help release that energy. And what will happen when you release that energy? Beautiful things. You will feel more capable, more confident, and more competent in your communication, which is such a high value to you. Communication and expression is very high value to you. And you will feel more confident in that. And you will create safer space for others to do the same, to confidently express themselves. And I feel like this is something that is very important to you. All right, let's move on to these action toes. These are your third toes. So, action, taking action within and taking action in the outside world. So when we look at these, you can tell just by looking at them, there's a lot more blocked energy going on in this toe than in this toe. There's a little bit going on here, but you've got a lot of positivity and optimism, and you take action. When you get an idea, when there's a concept that resonates, when you say you're going to do something, you take action on it, and you are a commitment keeper. There are actions that you desire to take, especially as it relates to the outside world. Now, your moon is in Leo. Again, I'm going to click forward here. Your moon is in Leo. Your moon are your non-negotiable needs. This is your emotional body. And one of those is to be seen, to be recognized, to have fun. Uh, so Leo is kind of packed. And then you've got in here the Saturn. So Saturn is the Time Lord. Saturn is the father figure of the zodiac. Saturn is also, incidentally, the ruler of Capricorn. And so Saturn is there bringing some restriction and some structure. And so asking yourself, what does, and interestingly, it's also Saturn retrograde at 22 degrees, and 22 degrees is the master builder. And so, what are the structures you can build around where you will feel more comfortable and more confident in receiving these non-negotiable needs, taking action on those, and showing up and receiving the praise, the accolades, and the shining forth that Leo strongly desires. As you take these actions, you're going to see this puffiness, this energy be released. This would be another place. Uh, if you give yourself a little toe massage every day while asking these questions about these particular toes, or if your partner does. So the questions for this particular toe would be, what actions am I here to take? What actions are in alignment right now? What are the structures that I can build? Think of it not as a structure like a box, but as a trellis that a plant can grow up, right? Like jasmine or honeysuckle or some of these beautiful plants that they need a trellis. Otherwise, they just like are flopping all over the ground. Um, and so the trellis, so that you can build in the actions that you can take for these non-negotiable needs and self-care. Self-care is very important here. Make sure you're getting your self-care. Okay, onto your relationship toes. These are your fourth toes. Your fourth toes are your relationship toes, relationship with self. I would say that you are a confident person. You're self-aware. You ask yourself the questions and you're not afraid to excavate your soul. And you get some confidence from this. Your ability to show up and do what is necessary. Take that action that is necessary. When we look over here at your chart and we find your Venus, which is here in Pisces. And so your Venus is the ruler of these relationship toes. And so what does that look like in this relationship toe? Which, if you look at the difference, this relationship toe leaning into action, this relationship toe much more standing on its own. So, and we definitely there's energetic correlation and weaving together here. We're not islands. Even as a leader, if you think about this big toe standing alone, doing what it takes to be a leader, and yet there's no leadership if you don't have any followers. And so, in this idea of we are all one, if you think of humanity as a body, you're not going to say, well, as the liver, I have the most important job. No, and that's totally not how you are. I don't even know why that went off, but hopefully that has some value to you, because it's a little unusual for me to squirrel that far. So this collective, and us all being members of this collective of humanity, and what you have to offer to humanity is very big. And this relationship with the world, and the question to ask this toe is, what relationships, where are my priority relationships? And then look at how your energy is spread with those priority relationships. Is there an imbalance between priority relationships and the energy that you give to them, and none or less priority relationships, or a few rungs down in relationship priority, and the energy that you're giving to those relationships? So just consider those things. And how are you showing up in your relationships? Are you able to express yourself fully? How do you show love? Is it through words? Is it through actions? Is it through physical touch? Just think about, are you receiving love in the language, if you will, the love language that you understand, that you speak, and that you appreciate? And are you giving love in the language that your recipient of that love knows, understands, and appreciates? And in Pisces, so with Venus over here in your Pisces, Pisces have a deep need for this spiritual connection. And it's important that you stay grounded in your relationships, and that you bring in this spiritual element with it. And what does that look like? What does that mean? And um, how do you fit in? Um, how do you stay in your body in a relationship when your natural place for a relationship in your relationship energy may be to move into a higher plane? And so combining those two, connecting your crown and your root chakra and bringing those together, and then moving that down through your legs into your ankles, into your feet, and down into your toes, and grounding into that. Let's talk about these little toes. These are your trust and prosperity toes. I really like how straight they are. They both have a nice solid nail on them. And then you have out here just a little protrusion, which I call the sixth toe. And this shows a global perspective, um, a deep care for humanity, and the purpose on this planet right now of actually having global impact through the ripple effect or just on your own. And so what a gift. What a gift. Keep going with that. It's especially prominent here on the right side. And so this also has to do with that Leo moon and um, being comfortable shining in the light for the world to see you and what you are offering. As far as your trust and prosperity toes, little bit of blocked energy here, but these tend to be very karmic toes, or toes that bring in a lot of baggage from ancestry, generations, past lives. Same with the relationship toes. So that's going to be another question to ask this relationship toe. Is this yours? And some of it is. And what is not yours? And what can you release because it is not yours? And then as you release that, as you know, it moves in both directions, back generations, back past lives, forward into your children and their children, so that it helps clear that out and clear that energetic signature. So what's yours? What's not yours? Your trust prosperity toes. Not a lot of blocked energy here. Your prosperity is going to come from your global impact. And don't get overwhelmed. Please don't get overwhelmed by this idea of global impact. I feel that this is from the ripple effect, meaning as you shine in your sphere, and people are attracted to that, and then they go out in their sphere and their sphere, and it moves out, and you have the power absolutely to do that. Healthy level of trust, and there may be just be some questions that you might want to ask around that. Is there anyone that I am trusting that I need to think twice about? And is there anyone that I'm not trusting that I need to give another look at? So when we go over here to the stars part of your reading here, so the stars are like the overarching idea of the journey, and and the big map. So if we were looking at a large map for a trip, this would be the map. And then your toes tell you, where are you right now on this map? And so we're looking here at these at your chart. Oh, so we already talked about your sun in Capricorn, your Mercury in Capricorn, and your Mars in Capricorn. So this having to do primarily with these second and third toes. And what I find additionally interesting, so then we also talked about the Venus here, is you have a small finger of Yod, or a small Yod, finger of God, pointing from your Mercury and your Sun here to the Saturn. So this has a lot to do with what we talked about earlier on in the reading, where what is the trellis upon which you can trellis your non-negotiable needs, your moon sign needs, these needs of Leo, to have fun, to have play, to have pleasure, to shine, and to be just fun. And this is also in your ninth house, which is about exploring and about beliefs. And when we have this yod, this is really a destiny point. This is one of the purposes of this incarnation. One of your sacred contracts of this incarnation is finding that trellis and then sharing it with others. And this comes from your very earthy Capricorn with your Mercury and your Sun. Those are the bottom points of this yod. And so, how are you structured in your speaking? And are there times when you want to be less structured in your speaking? And in your Sun, they're in Capricorn. How do you desire to shine? What does that look like? And how does that feel in your body to shine? In the last probably 10 years, you've experienced probably some life-changing things around your Chiron. Chiron is sitting here in your chart. And just at the end, right before they move here into Taurus, so here at 27 degrees. And just be prepared. Chiron right now over here entered Aries a while ago and is going to be traveling over in the next few years over your Chiron. When our Chiron is in Aries, it is I am, is the statement for Aries. And so the idea that your moon is in Leo, which wants to have a very strong sense of self and of independence. And then your sun here in Capricorn, which is structure, ambition. And then you've got your Chiron over here in Aries, which is about I am. So the question to ask yourself here, and this has to do with your life path toe, who am I? And how is this wound of Chiron, and we can talk about this more in the reading, but Chiron is the healer of Greek mythology who was wounded emotionally and wounded physically. And yet he was the healer of the healers. He was the healer of the heroes, as the wounded. So he represents the wounded leader, the wounded healer, or the wounded leader and the wounded healer. And so just pay attention to that. There's some energy coming up here in your Chiron, and it has to do with this big toe. No need to rush it. Chiron doesn't move fast. And allow that energy to just sink in to who are you, and in what ways does this show up in your work? How are you the wounded leader and the wounded leader and the wounded healer in your work? And this also has to do with this desire, this deep desire that you have for others to feel safe with you expressing themselves and communicating. Your North Node is sitting right here on the cusp between Libra and Scorpio. So there's enough here that there's kind of an orbit. It's here in Libra. So it's about bringing balance, partnerships and relationships. And so our North Node is where we're stretching into. It's this place that we're moving into in this incarnation. And so sitting right there. So this idea of partnership, of relationship, of balance. And this is interesting because it is sitting almost exactly across from your Chiron at 27 degrees. And Chiron in Aries and your North Node in Libra is all about independence and interdependence. Aries is all about independence and that warrior pioneering spirit, whereas your North Node there in Libra is about interdependence. It's about this collective. So we go back to this sixth toe in your action, in your communication, in your relationships. It's this balance between independence, you, and interdependence, humanity. And so leaning into those questionings and where that is, that's really beautiful. And then this orb where it goes right there. If we think about a 5-degree orb, there's also the Scorpio aspect, which is about transformation. And with your Uranus there in Scorpio, this is about revolution and transformation. Um, Additionally, Uranus, which is this planet right here, is at 11 degrees. That's the doorway. So revolution and is kind of the doorway to transformation, to balancing the power, which is all about Scorpio is about power, as well as many, many other things, power and transformation. Libra, where your North Node is about balance and that interdependence, that relationship side. Meanwhile, you've got Pluto sitting over here in Libra. And Pluto is the ruler, modern day ruler of Scorpio. And Pluto is the great transformer. So you are here in so many ways to transform relationships, to transform how people think about self and your own as well as others' ability. What's the word? I don't like the word ability. The feeling of being empowered to express oneself. Yes. So the question to ask then is, what does this look like? Where do you go to be able to accomplish this life purpose? I hope you enjoyed that reading. It was really fun to do this reading for you. You have a really beautiful energy, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you more when we have our one-on-one phone call.